Hello. Um, I'm making a video today. Something I wanted to talk about is panpsychism. Why do I want to talk about this? I don't know, because I'm kind of crazy. Um, I have been doing a deep dive into mysticism lately for some reason. I don't know. I don't know how my life got here or why this is what I'm into right now, but and I feel kind of hippy dippy about it, but it's been really fun, honestly. Like even just from a I don't know, just like a like just for fun kind of basis. It's fun. Like it's not like I'm trying to take it too seriously. Um Even though I kind of am, because I've read some really interesting things about it. There's a really cool YouTube series that's going on right now called Liber Indigo, and it connects like UX and UI design to like philosophy and mysticism, and I think that's really cool. And I bought the book because there's a companion book, and it's great. Um, yeah, I'll probably link it. Just because it's really cool. I don't know. But yeah, so panpsychism is basically the idea that all matter is conscious. And I think that's just like, whoa, dude. But all matter and everything in the universe, it has like some level of consciousness, but it's not like how we experience it. Obviously, it's not necessarily that it's like aware. I mean, it is, but it's just like everything's made up of experience, basically. Like, and that's kind of like the fundamental like element to everything is consciousness. It's the way I think of it is, the way I've heard it described that just makes a lot of sense to me is that like the universe is basically like the ocean, or like consciousness is like the ocean, right? And then our consciousness, the way you and I experience it right now as people, it's like water droplets that have been separated from the sort of bigger like collective consciousness. And we travel around the world, and then we get absorbed into different systems. So if we're like these little water drops, we might get like we might like end up in somebody's bathtub. We might end up in a pool, in a lake, or somebody might drink us, piss us out. And it's just this cycle that keeps going, or we get evaporated and rained, and then the rain takes us into the ocean. And that's kind of what our lives are. Like consciousness is kind of being filtered down into this sort of complex system. But higher awareness, you could argue, is when we die and entropy sort of takes our consciousness back into the ocean, per se. So it's basically like the droplet, it finally reaches the ocean again. And I think that's a really cool way to look at it, because it takes a lot of the negative aspects out of, or the negative sort of feelings we have towards death. And we all feel that way. We're all scared of death. We're all scared of oblivion. But the reality is that like it might not be how like the way we perceive it. It might be different. Like it might be more of like a reunion with like who we actually are, which is the universe. And I think that's really cool. And then if you believe in samsara, and reincarnation, then eventually your consciousness will just find a new system, and you'll become a different person. You won't have your memories, your emotions, or any part of who you are right now, but I think that awareness is probably the constant that carries through. And I know one thing a lot of people might immediately be like skeptical of is that all of this seems very presumptuous. Like, how can I make these claims about consciousness in the first place? And it doesn't seem super scientific. And I think that is a fair point, but consciousness isn't even really understood in the scientific community yet. Science, I think, has its limitations. I think it's, the problem with science is that it's a tool, and it's a very useful tool. I'm not trying to discount science at all. It's just that I think it has its limitations on what it can comment on, and that's like ideas and things that are sort of hard to measure or observe in our actual world or with our senses, because our senses themselves have limitations, right? We can understand like different modes of consciousness, like when we dream or when we're on drugs, but so yeah, I think consciousness is one of those things that's kind of just like a fair game in terms of, it's all like fair game in terms of who can sort of talk about it and what kind of ideas they can have about it. And the most common accepted theory that everybody seems to have, like the average person seems to believe that consciousness, it arises from material. And I think that's interesting because it's weird because we say that, but consciousness is the only thing that we it's like the very thing that is necessary for us to be talking about any of this in the first place. It's like the very fundamental thing that we all have to recognize, like, yes, I am experiencing, it's like that one like fundamental thing beyond everything. So I just don't think it's crazy to say that instead of consciousness arising from matter is more like matter arises from consciousness. I don't think that's like a crazy thing to say personally. I don't know. So I've been thinking lately that like the ideas we have themselves and the ideals we have, to some degree, those are very real too. Like our thoughts, those to some degree are real. Even if you look at it from a materialistic perspective, like our thoughts and our beliefs, like the universe allowed for us to think of those things in the first place. So just because they're not empiric, like they're not empirically like consistent with what we measure and what we see, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not real. And like, yeah, I've been deep into like the forms and like idealism in particular. I just think it's like interesting. I don't know. An article I read recently about panpsychism said that like panpsychism actually has potential to save our environment to some degree, because if you start to look at the world as being conscious itself, or the universe being conscious itself, instead of it just being sort of this mechanical, soulless thing, then it's easier to disrespect it and to sort of use it or to just like use it as a tool. And the problem with doing that is we're seeing the consequences of that right now, like climate change, global warming, all of that shit. And the reality is like, it's coming back to bite us in the ass. But what I think is interesting is, in this article, it talks about how in the past actually, it was our belief in like spirits, or like nature spirits, or even just like our polytheistic like gods back during like with the Greeks or the Norse people, they had gods that governed over different aspects of the world, and they kind of personified different aspects of the world. Like the ocean was like a god, or the sun was a god, or the forest was a god. So if you wanted to cut down trees, you, to some degree, maybe not in every culture, but in some cultures, you'd have to consult like a nature god or spirit in order to have permission to do that. So to some degree, you can argue that like paganism, like it could actually protect nature in a really weird way. And I think panpsychism could bring back a sense of responsibility over nature. Now, there is sort of an ethical downside to all of this, and that's that, like, this also means that there's no way to live without hurting something. We consume plants, or it would first require, or it would first probably make us like all vegans or something, because like, why would you kill an animal if it feels pain just as deeply as you do? But like, if you're a true panpsychist, then it would even be like material matter, and like plants, or just like, more material things, and that's where we need to get energy to live. So there is a bit of a moral quandary there, but on the other hand, you could also argue that it's not, it's like, yes, you're hurting the world, but you're also part of the world too, so you also matter, if that makes sense. So your life right now matters, and if that requires the taking of life from somewhere else, I know it can seem sad, but at the same time, that also means that that life that you took and that you consume is to some degree still alive as well, and just kind of going through the cycle of life. So it's not necessarily bad or good. It's just kind of like what happens. Like, everything is a part of the same thing. I think that that's just really interesting. And like eating, like consuming, like we could feel guilty for that, but to some degree, you could make an argument that, panpsychism also allows like a way out of that sort of ethical quandary as well. The first thing I thought of was like I'm gonna mispronounce this because I always do, but like I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't speak Hindi, and like the Bhagavad Gita? The Gita? I'm just gonna say the Gita. I'm sorry. I don't have a reference right now. But that's the first thing I thought of, because like in that story, Arjuna, he has to go to war against an opposing side, and he realizes that he sees on the other side himself on the other side, and he doesn't want to hurt, people that he loves. But then Krishna, who is pretty much God, or the universe itself, it's Brahman. Krishna tells Arjuna that first of all, that life in general, it's a constant thing. As soon as one dies, they go somewhere else, So that's the first thing he says, and then he says that like all you should care about is giving yourself to the universe, and like whatever your dharma is, or whatever your purpose is in this life, whatever your function is. That's the first thing I think of when talking about like the ethical quandaries of a universal consciousness. I mean, regardless, you could argue that, and this would be kind of the Buddhist answer to all of this, is that then maybe the end goal of life, and I'm speaking broadly there, I'm not just talking about our individual lives, but like the sort of cosmic universal life that is perpetually going, the end goal of that is to return to a level of like equal, like stillness. Like I think of the universe as being like this like wave that's like flat, and then it wiggles with our lives and with nature, and sort of the constant, the sort of split, the sort of dualistic split between my mind and my body and myself versus the rest of the worlds in the universe, which is for me to sort of transform for myself. The end goal, and sort of the release from samsara and reincarnation, would be to probably accept death, to accept letting go of everything and yourself, therefore. And in that sense, there wouldn't be a dualistic split anymore, because life and matter wouldn't exist anymore, because as soon as there's those things, there's a split between the sort of the the self and the other, if that makes sense. I know that sounded that kind of went south there with my explanation, but um yeah, so Buddha, like the Buddhist idea is that you recognize there is no self, and then you cease all attachments to the universe, and then you return to basically everything and nothing at the same time. Um, but a lot of us can't do that because we all have attachments to life. We love the people we love, even though they are technically, from a metaphysical standpoint, they're us with this sort of train of thought. Like, since they're metaphysically the same as us, like depriving, I mean, like loving them, like it's not like they're gonna go anywhere when they do die, and when we die. So, you know, there is that, but I mean, a lot of us are entertained by this sort of duality between this sort of split between you and me and plants and nature because it's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of fun to feel separate from it all. It's like a video game. Like we get rewarded, and like the ego at the end of the day is also just there to sort of protect you. Like even if it is kind of false and illusionary, it's still fun, you know. Um and so a lot of us can't be monks in this life. I think the end to all of this would be to go monk mode and to cease all attachments. And maybe nobody's been able to do that except for the Buddha. And maybe time isn't linear, and reincarnation, you can get reincarnated into the past and as the people you love. Um um and if that's the case, then maybe the Buddha's the only one who was able to escape, and we won't, and on our own paths, we'll probably live through everything and experience everything until we become the Buddha and we let go of the world. I see the ultimate, like, monk mode as just being basically the stage where you let go of yourself and the world. It's basically, I like to think of like the universe as like a video game, in that, like, it's fun for a while, but eventually we'll get bored, or you know we might get tired of it, and then we'll stop playing. And that's just how I see the monk mode. It's basically saying, I don't want to participate anymore. I don't want to play this game anymore because I see the truth, and I'm ready to just let it go. Now, I can't go monk mode in this life because I'm having too much fun. I have people I love, and I have attachments that I don't think I could personally give up. So I'm going to probably go around the wheel a few more times before I get there. But that's totally fine too. It's not a good or bad thing to enjoy all of this, you know? It's a rather neutral thing. It's basically like, if you're not ready, you're not ready. There may be a day where you're ready to give everything up to the void, but if it's not today, then that's completely fine too. And if that's not this life either, that's fine. Like, go around a few more times, have your fun. Um, Sorry, I didn't mean to get into a tangent about all this, but, like, I don't know. This shit just goes on in my brain all day. I probably need to be more busy with my life, um, but that's the thing, is like, it could also be true though that, like, maybe this is all happening for a reason, and there is no end. Maybe we keep coming back, and even when we think we don't want to play anymore, maybe there is a bit of attachment that's always there, and maybe we function better being split off. I don't know. Um, I feel like the way it probably works is it's like a game, like this infinite game that we always come back to. Like, we get nostalgia, and then, like, I'm speaking as like the universe brain, by the way, like the universe itself. Like, maybe it's like there's big chunks of time where there's absolutely nothing, but then that gets boring, so the universe just manifests itself into this game every once in a while. And then that's why we're here. It's because we got bored and we wanted to play a game. Um I think that's a really weird and creepy way of looking at everything, but um and it also reminds me of, I don't know though, because like going monk mode might not be worth it too, because I think Nietzsche, like going monk mode reminds me of like the sort of lifestyle that Schopenhauer, the philosopher Schopenhauer, the kind of life that he advocates for, which is one that ceases attachment this um to this world and to the will to life, because he sees it as a force that is just perpetuating our suffering. But Nietzsche, on the other hand, he he disagreed with Schopenhauer because he saw all of this as being important, and he saw that the game of ego and the self is actually not a bad one. It's one that can be quite rewarding. Like, yes, it's going to be hard and we're going to get our ass kicked and we're probably going to see a lot of other people suffer, and that's going to suck. But for Nietzsche, it's a way of self-transformation. It's that can be rewarding, because on the other end of living and deciding to live and to exist, and the universe deciding to live itself, like it it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult because everything is separated. But on the other hand, on the other side of that, there's a sort of self-transformation. Um, there's a which can be rewarding, right? It's like when we play video games, like why do people like playing Dark Souls so much? It's because they like getting their ass kicked and then overcoming that, self-overcoming, and having that will to power and becoming stronger. That feels really rewarding and cool. So all is to say is that there's just two paths you can go down, and I don't think either one is necessarily worse than the other. I just think it's how you decide. Like if you don't want to play anymore, then you go down the Schopenhauer route. If you do want to keep playing, then you go down the Nietzsche route. I think eventually you'll probably find yourself in both camps. Um, and I think it just goes on forever like this. Like we get bored, we play the game of the universe. And then when we get tired of it, we put it down. And I think it's just this constant flow of two forces. Um, yeah, I think that's where I'm at with all of that, though, to be honest. Like, it just makes a lot of sense to me. It gives me a lot of dread and comfort at the same time. Everything is pretty much a contradiction all the time, even myself. You believe in one thing, and then there's sort of always a counterbalance to it. It's kind of like yin and yang, you know. Um, but I think that's how it works. Like, I think that's how this all, like, just happens, you know? There might be something on the other side of suffering that's worth suffering for. Something I thought of, too, was Schopenhauer has a metaphor for this. He has a little story called the porcupine dilemma. It's basically that porcupines, during the winter, they freeze to death, and it's lonely. Um, but at the same time, during that winter, they cuddle with each other, and their quills poke each other, and they start to bleed, and it sucks. Because either way, you're warm, but you're hurting on the sort of Nietzsche path. You're warm and you're hurting, um, from other people's quills and other people's bullshit. But if you go down the Schopenhauer path, you're setting yourself free from other people and life, but it's kind of cold and lonely and boring. Um, and that's how I kind of see it. Like I think that's a really cool metaphor for just like that can work perfectly for both of their perspectives. We're just porcupines, man. Like, I don't know. I feel like I went kind of crazy towards the end here. I feel like I got wildly off track, but maybe one day I'll be able to express these thoughts and emotions better. Because I know this doesn't sound the most coherent. Like, I'm fully aware of that. I think my brain is probably moving too fast for my mouth. Um, or it's like ADHD and I keep getting distracted. I don't know. I just have a hard time communicating what I'm actually thinking. So I've been trying to do it through art instead of doing stuff like this, because when I talk to a camera, it just comes out like a word vomit. But the problem is with art, since it's subjective, I feel like it goes over people's heads too. So I feel like I need my words. But I'm not a great writer when it comes to like writing essays or books or anything like that either, because it just comes off incoherent as well. I'm still trying to find a medium to sort of manifest my ideas and thoughts and feelings about all of this, but so I apologize for how confusing and off track I went in plenty of places. Maybe one day I'll be able to talk about it in a coherent matter, but I guess that's just not today. Um, but I don't know. I just wanted to kind of word vomit what I was thinking though, or what I've been thinking about, because I don't know. This isn't really something I can bring up in casual conversation. It gets awkward really fast, and it makes me feel even more crazy. Um, but I also feel like when I dwell on it too long by myself, it just makes me even more crazy. So I don't know. I don't know where I went with all of this, but I'm just gonna end it because I feel like I'm dragging this out. Goodbye.